Hello, and in today's video we're going to look at a classic game from close to 40 years ago, The Lords of Creation, which is actually a game published by Avalon Hill, who don't particularly have a very good role-playing history. They produced RuneQuest 3, I believe they took over production of the James Bond role-playing game. They also produced Powers and Perils, and of course this from Tom Moldvay of BX D&D fame, The Lords of Creation. And the cover art, I don't know, I don't think it does the game too much favours, but it does achieve, I guess, what it's trying to set out to demonstrate is that this is a multi-genre game where you can be playing in a fantasy world, open up a portal and jump out and bang, you're in a sci-fi setting. So yeah, from that point of view, it does a pretty good job. But I think some of the black and white art inside is actually slightly better than this cover image. I mean, it's not a bad image, but for example, this little sort of green man face on the back of the box is so much better. Now, this is the ultimate role-playing game, a game of science, fantasy, science fiction, and high adventure that explores the farthest reaches of your imagination. Splendid adventures take place throughout time, space, and other dimensions. So this is very much a game in the sort of Doctor Who, Amber, multiverse sort of style of play. And in theory, it will allow you to play not any genre. So in some ways, it's a universal role-playing game before that happened. And it's copyright 1983, but I think it actually came out in 1984-ish, but maybe it was available in certain locations in 83. And it's got 53 different types of weapons, 450 foes, 100 non-combat skills, 53 combat skills, and 60 powers apparently. The rules are pretty interesting. The box is rather oversized, and I don't have the original dice, but that's fairly easy to take care of. It's a D20, a D10, and a D6, although you do need to roll D100, so probably these days you'd end up using a D20, two D10s, and a D6. So inside, you've got the rule book and the Book of Foes, which actually has quite a nice cover on, including a dream-eating entity from Japanese myth, a phoenix, a dragon, and a couple of other weird characters. Now, the rule book does actually have a font that's very reminiscent of basic and expert D&D, and it's fairly easy to read. It does lay out quite nicely how to play the game. So it's got that sort of Tom Moldvay introduction to how to play pretty good. It explains the dice and the various dice ranges you can roll with those dice. It introduces you to the abilities. So you've got muscle, speed, stamina, mental, and luck. And these creates like your power level. Personal force, I believe, is the official term for it. And your personal force is effectively your level, using D&D terms. Now, your muscle, speed, stamina, mental, and luck get divided by 10, rounding up to give you a bonus. So your muscle bonus is for damage, i.e. melee damage. Your speed becomes an initiative bonus. Your stamina is your healing rate. Your mental is a power modification, and luck goes towards your luck roll, which is sort of, I guess, a bit like a saving throw. So your personal force, this determines special powers your characters can get. So experience points, they are things you can spend to level up your abilities, and by leveling up your abilities, that will increase your personal force, which will allow you to level up and give you a title. So up here we've got your personal force. 1 to 10, you're a neophyte, you have no powers. It's going to cost you 10 XP to increase an ability score, and you've got the ability of dimensional sight, which is laid out here. So dimensional sight, dimensional language, spatial projection, temporal projection, dimensional projection, double healing, transmigration, space travel, time travel, dimensional travel, and then construction, which is where you become a lord of creation, and that will allow you to create your own pocket universe to inhabit and run and all that stuff. And effectively it's where you can become dungeon master, effectively, so a lord of creation. So money is weirdly in dollars, which is a little bit annoying. Your movement rate's in feet. Then you've got life points, so that's based around your stamina score. And then an armor rating. So it reckons you should start the game in the 20th century, so the 1900s, and then obviously you can travel to other areas. It's then got a very nice section about how to create your character, including a sample character sheet. And this is where the game, I think, maybe didn't do so well. It was not massively expensive by modern standards. I think it was $12 back in the day. We can actually potentially look it up in a price list. But the problem is it didn't come with any character sheets, and it didn't come with the adventure. It was meant to come with the Horn of Roland as standard. And in fact, have I got a bit of paper? Yeah, here. The Horn of Roland, as referred to on page 43, is not included in the game. It was pulled and made into a self-contained module that you can buy separately, so you'd have to buy that separately. So if it's like $12 for the base game, I think it was about $8 each for the adventure, so it was a $20 game. Well, if you compare that to D&D that came with a set of dice, Keep on the Borderland, and the basic set for $10, $15, this didn't necessarily represent brilliant value for money. Yeah, not ideal. Now, there were 3 adventures for this: the Horn of Roland, the Yeti Sanction, and then the Omegacron, which did include character sheets. Interestingly, a sort of referee's screen was included in the Yeti Sanction. So, yeah, it's a bit of a weird way they went about doing this, and it's sort of one of the problems I think Avalon Hill had with their RPG products, that, they were big on the wargaming, and they produced, a nice quality box. This is 40 years old. It's still holding up pretty well. The colours have held up decently. The pages are nice. There's no obvious sign of rusty staples. So, they did produce a quality product, but, was it really worth that much more than D&D and its ilk? And, yeah, sadly, this game, I think, didn't take off massively. So here's all the skills. Now, rather interesting, you've got these like core skills and then these sub skills which you get based on the level of the skill, rated from 1 to 5. And it talks about all these skills you've got on the back cover, but I'm not convinced you've actually got that many inside. And as you see, blue for the skill, then a little breakout box with the numbers for the sub skills, and hopefully that's showing up nicely. And yeah, then you've got this thing called reinforcing skills, where certain skills will help other skills. You've then got a big equipment list, which of course covers all sorts of things. And then you've got your armour, obviously, as well. So bronze armour costs 500 SC, which is sort of credits. So you've got like dollars and credits, and it all gets a little bit confusing. So it says here that $1 equals 1 credit equals 1 SC. So this is to do, I guess, with whether you're in the current, the past, or the future. So dollars for the now, I guess credit is for the future, and SC is for the past. Or maybe it's the other way around. Anyway, close combat weapons. So you've got damage range, skill level, cost, initiative bonus. And the combat is decently well explained. Then we've got ranged weapons. As you see, it's pretty comprehensive, very good. It's got things about animation, it's got dividing damage across people, you've got magical effects, you've got potentially mega damage, I guess, from big super weapons. Then you've got the weirdness, which is the sort of spell effects known as powers. So you can be an adept, a clairvoyant, a cyborg, an invoker, a magneto, a mentant, a poltergeist, a projector, a sumatran, a sorcerer, a telepath, a wizard, and then they've got 5 like sub abilities. So let's pick one. Let's see what we got. So an invoker. So an invoker is magical. They've got elemental shaping, invoke elements, possession, elemental body, dimensional walking. So an invoker specialises in spells involving elemental planes of earth, air, fire, water, and shadow. Invoker powers allow the individual to change the shapes of anything associated with the elemental planes, summon creatures from there, take possession of a foe's body, or banish dangerous elementals, change their own body into one of the elemental substances, and travel between the dimensions. So elemental shaping, 300 foot, takes amount of time equal to power times 4, and you can use 3 divided by day, so 3 times a day, I'm guessing. So you can change the shape of anything associated with an elemental plane, which is no larger than 30 feet away in any direction. So is no larger than 33. That's a weird way of explaining it. I think also it refers to rolling your abilities as a 1d10 plus a 1d10 rather than using the more common phrase of just roll 2d10. So there are some weird sort of languages in here. So you've got each bit is explained in quite a bit of detail, and it effectively spells, to be honest. But there you go. And there's quite a lot of them, and it goes on for quite a few pages. Then we get to the bit that obviously is very important, the Game Master's information, so what you're meant to do, how to deal with it, talks about adventures, and again it mentions the Horn of Roland here, keeping the game fun, an example of play, creating your own adventures, the various settings, and this is quite interesting actually. So it talks about a fantasy setting, science fiction setting, or a science fantasy setting, time travel, pocket universes, parallel worlds, alternative dimensions, and then it talks about themes. So it's a really good book for introducing you into the sort of multi-genre worlds, and I think they did a pretty good job, and I'm not sure why it didn't do better really, but as I say, there are some reasons. So Lands of Wonder, so these are some settings. So you've got the Elder Lands, which is a sort of ancient Greek sort of setting, and you've got a nice map there. You've got Imperial Terror, which I believe is like a science fiction setting, so a bit like Traveller-esque. The Land of Uluru, which is William Blake. The Swashbuckling area, so almost like Parity or Three Musketeers. The Prideaux, which is a sort of Welsh sort of Celtic myth setting. That's kind of an interesting setting. The Elemental Planes, the Nine Worlds, obviously your sort of Viking-y setting, so Asgard, Vanheim, Elfheim, Midgard. And that's pretty much it for this book, and then a nice little index on the back. So yeah, I mean it was a good little product, but some weird choices here and there. So the Book of Foes, there's loads of foes with XP that you get from them. So for example, that there are some biggies in here. So Quetzalcoatl, 12,170 XP for taking him out. And yeah, so this is basically just a giant monster manual, and some of them have better explanations than others. There's fairly sparse information on a lot of them. There was a magazine that supported this called Heroes, I want to say, and it was supporting pretty much all of the Avalon Hill role-playing games. So that's the base box. But really, if you get the base box, you've got to get the Horn of Roland, and ideally you get the Yeti Sanction and Omnicron as well. This was pretty Spartan, to be honest. So, you get your little sheet, you get your adventure, and then you get some handouts. Now, the Horn of Roland, as you can see, has got this rather interesting cover art with our heroes, the lady and the gentleman with the blue beret, and there's some thing riding down from the storms on the boat. And it's an annoying little box. To get things out, you have to pick it up and tip it to get stuff out, to be honest. These booklets, slightly less quality paper on them, I think, than the main rule book, but not bad and perfectly serviceable. And let's not spoil that, because I'm hoping to actually run that with some people, and if you're watching the video, it's going to be spoiled. So nice load of blurb on the back, 48-page adventure, special aids, first adventure in a campaign that's going to take you across multiple worlds and dimensions, so pretty interesting. So the second one was the Yeti Sanction, again quite a funky cover. 32-page adventure, 3 player aids, and a game master screen, which is weird that you've chucked that in later on. So it's not a standalone product. You have to have the base set, and yeah, it's an interesting thing. And it does talk here about you will need a personal force of 20 or less. So you don't want too high a level, but Yeti Sanction, obviously we're dealing with Yetis. Horn of Roland, but it's a murder mystery apparently. So there you go. Looking forward to doing a bit more of a deep dive into this. I do recommend it. I have skimmed the rule book, but I need to have a really good read to actually get this one to the table. And I will have Omnicron. It's still in the post, sadly. For some reason, the Yeti Sanction arrived first. But as you see, a little bit of colour fading, and a bit of a crease. But overall, I'm actually pretty pleased with how these have held up for a game, as I say, produced basically in the mid-80s. So anyway, that's it for now. I hope you've enjoyed this very quick sort of unboxing and skim and overview of the system. Again, might come back to this with a more in-depth deep dive later, but I've got all sorts of projects on the go at the moment, so we'll have to wait and see on that. But I thought I'd just do a quick little video for you just to know I'm still around, and I am actually working on my own game projects, one of which actually is very similar to Lords of Creation, as a multi-universe, also a fantasy and a sci-fi one, so I've got all the bases covered there. And I've also got a spy game in the works as well. But anyway, that's enough about me. That's been Avalon Hill's Lords of Creation, a Tom Moldvay game, which is the reason I picked it up, because Tom Moldvay is awesome, and it's a great shame he's no longer with us. Anyway, until the next video, happy gaming.